Right, hello and good morning. The time is now 10 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm Carla, I'm the marketing manager here at Purdicom, and today we're joined by Sam Evans from CommScope RUCKUS, who will be delivering some fantastic content for us. Most of you will know Sam, but for some of you who don't, Sam is a systems engineer for RUCKUS, and has many years experience in the industry and has also been with RUCKUS for around 3 years now. So as always, we're in very good hands today. This quarter's Technical Family Day is RUCKUS ICX Switch Management made easy. We all know solid and robust switching is the absolute foundation of fast and responsive communication networks. And today, Sam is going to show us how easy it is to manage ICX switches with the brand new and improved GUI, which is very exciting. There are many benefits, and we will also see a full demonstration. We do want this event to be as interactive as possible, so it's your event, so please do feel free to ask questions as we go. And for this, if you could use the Q&A panel as usual. I think what we'll do is we'll try and address these as we move through the content. And also, just so you know, you'll notice that we are recording the event. And as always, I will be following up with a link to the video and everything else you need. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sam. Thanks very much, Sam.
Thanks, Carla. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another RUCKUS Technical Family webinar, where today, as Carla mentioned already, we're going to be looking at ICX management made easy. So again, you know, I'm Sam Evans, and I'm going to be taking you through today's session. And so before we do begin, just a quick thank you to the guys at Purdicom for arranging today's session and, you know, getting everybody together. And now, if everybody has their coffee, I'll take you through the agenda for today. So the flow of today's webinar will be as follows. For the new folks on here, we'll be taking a quick look at the offerings we have here at RUCKUS for the long-standing partners and everyone in between. It's just going to be kind of a quick refresher. We'll then start to take a tour through Unleashed and ICX management, making sure you're up to date with all of the offerings that we have there. Then we'll take a look at our RUCKUS Cloud and ICX capabilities. We're also going to have a look at the new ICX GUI on FastIron 9.0. And then for those of you that are kind of script writers, API enthusiasts and coders, we're going to have a look at ICX's large-scale automation using Ansible APIs and napalm. Bragging rights to whoever can post the full name of that acronym in the chat and not Google it. I'll then give you guys a demo of Cloud with ICX, and I have also got the new ICX web UI to give you guys a whistle-stop tour of. We'll round up with some Q&A. We'll try and address what we can through the webinar, but we have put some time aside at the end just in case. So with all that being said, let's get into it. So the introduction / reintroduction, and it's not going to be everything, guys. It's just going to be some of it. So before that, just a quick look at some other bits. So going to market through partners is part of RUCKUS's DNA, and I'm sure that I've looked at the panelist list. A lot of you are already going to know this. And RUCKUS was named the overall winner of CRN's annual report card for the channel from 2013 to 2016 and 2019 as well. So you guys are in good hands. And what that means for you is that whichever RUCKUS partner you may work with or distributor, you can be sure that we're behind them, ensuring their success as well and your guys' success. RUCKUS has built its business by enabling its customers to deliver a better connection experience to their employees, guests, customers, students, subscribers, and so on. Organizations which that end user experience matters to the business outcome, you know, they kind of seek us out. But of course, those great end user experiences don't just happen. Someone has to make it happen, and that job normally falls on IT and you guys, to be fair. We've also built our business around making it simpler for everybody to deliver great end user connectivity experience. Ultimately, it's about saving time. So IT and people can spend less time managing the networks and more of it on projects that are strategic to the business, you know, or watching Netflix and scrolling social media. Both of these outcomes could be accomplished with unlimited funds, but we don't require that of our customers. And that's kind of the third pillar of our value proposition, making every network element do more and in turn allowing you to deploy fewer network elements. Fewer network elements means fewer licenses, fewer cables, less power, and so on. Kind of common example of that is something that you guys will hopefully be familiar with, is that we regularly deploy a lot less access points than we do with with competitor technology. Another example is we offer multi-gig ports on entry-level access switches, whereas others might make you buy into the mid and high end to achieve that. So this is the slide that kind of briefs the RUCKUS portfolio as a whole, and I'm hoping everybody's familiar with this now, but we've got our software and software as a service offerings with cloud path security and onboarding, guest networks. We've got our network intelligence with RUCKUS Analytics, and our location-based tracking with Spot. Through the control and management, we've got a variety of different flavors of Smart Zone, Zone Director, Cloud. You know, you can host these things on-premise, off-premise. We've got RUCKUS Unleashed for the budget conscious, and we've got our IoT controller as well. And then through our switching portfolio, we've got a range of different families that bridge from the edge to kind of access, aggregation, and core. And then our APs, which you are all familiar with, we've got our outdoor, indoor, specialty, and so on. So we realized we've got a lot of options, especially when it comes to things like, you know, our switches and our APs, but that's a good thing, right? You know, it helps us, it lets us help you tackle an even bigger variety of deployments and meet customer scenarios. Adding single pane of glass management with our switching portfolio into Smart Zone, Cloud, and Unleashed, and it is really starting to help cover a lot more deployments. The ICX line is kind of a comprehensive portfolio of edge, aggregation, and core switches. And the first thing to kind of note is that there's no chassis. We don't believe in them. We don't do them. They require too much upfront spending, too much power, too much cooling. And then eventually, you know, when it comes to refresh time, you have to rip kind of everything out. Whereas you're a lot more granular and modular with what you can do with the switching families here with the ICX stuff. So instead of chassis, everything's stackable, and we can stack up to 12 switches per family. So capacity is basically scaled in a linear fashion, one appliance at a time, kind of as and when you need it. Plus, we do offer our range of fiber optic cables and modules, and we've obviously got our technical support services for all of the above as well. So our access switches have some key positionings that I'd just like to highlight for you guys. And you can see here, we've got a range of different switches from the 76, 75 and the 71s. So right down to kind of entry level stuff. And, you know, we offer the multi-gigabit connection on all of these. Some of them are going to have 100 gig uplinks, and that's just on a mid-range switch. So, you know, you're not pigeonholed into buying just a high-end core switch for those 100 gig requirements. All of your PoE needs are going to be catered for with one of the above options. And we've got the kind of great value for money, ticking those higher end requirements on the entry level switches. So all of the switches, apart from the 7150, have redundant power supply options as well, with the note of the 7250 being an external shelf one and not a hot swap. But full features can be found on the ICX family datasheet. We've got 3 models of compact fanless switches, and I think I might actually be able to show you all 3 of them on the various platforms through the demos later. So these are great for multi-gigabit use cases and for high PoE requirements for a couple of APs using the C10ZP. You know, that's just an edge cab that you don't need to put a full-blown switch in it, but you require multi-gig and the higher PoE ports. So both the 10 port and the 12 port share all of the features and capabilities of the 7150 family. including the ability to actually stack these compact switches with other 7150 switches. You can rack mount them, you can desktop mount them. I actually have one here in my office and I've mounted it underneath the desk. So you can make them as discreet as possible. And they have 1 and 10 gig uplink or stacking ports. The 8-port switch is kind of a basic out-of-the-box switch, which just is going to provide connectivity. There's no stacking, it's layer 2 only with 1 gig uplinks. And you kind of use the switch when price is the top purchase criteria. Keep in mind that there's a significant difference in capabilities between the 8-port and the 12-port, but kind of a small price difference. And again, all of these switches can be managed by Smart Zone Cloud and Unleashed. So we've got our specific multi-gig switches as well, which are great for the Wi-Fi 6 AP deployments. And we've known the Z series switches, so that's after the 802.3BZ standard for multi-gig. You've got the 7650 for the high performance deployments needing 5 or 10 gig connections, or for customers who just want to future-proof their network. And then you've got as we've just spoken about, the 7150 10ZP, and you've also got a full-blown 7150 48ZP, where 2.5 gigabit is adequate for your customers and they don't want to spend out on a higher end switch. So all of these switches that you see on the screen now are going to be able to provide PoE plus on all ports and up to 90 PoE on some. And again, the same management platforms apply. You can stack up to 12 and they do things like in-service software upgrades, etc. So that's the end of just the overview or the review of the portfolio. So next we're going to have a look at the Unleashed ICX management capabilities. So centralized monitoring and reporting is what you get with Unleashed and ICX, and switch support started in Unleashed in version 200.8. And I'm sure some of you guys on the call will remember, when we only supported 24 access points on Unleashed, and switching was kind of something that I hadn't even been thought about. You look at it where it is now, and it will scale up to 128 APs and 8 switches per location or per Unleashed network. And you're going to be able to have the kind of following functionality. So you're going to be able to do the auto discovery of switches. You also have a manual option as well. And you're going to have a nice overview of what you can actually see on your switches. So you have port status, PoE status, and consumption. So it's important for your PoE budgets. You have the ability to enable, disable, and reset PoE per port. And you've got your connected device details. You've got the ability to look at your config backups and restores as well, and your software updates. And on iOS and Android, we've got the Unleashed mobile app, which has the ability to do a lot of this as well. So you can keep an eye on your network on the go. One of Unleashed's kind of best kept secrets is Unleashed Multi-Site Manager. So it's an extension to Unleashed that will take management towards the next level. Not everybody wants to go cloud or invest in controllers on site, but would still like to have the option of a single pane of glass management and the ability to expand across multiple sites or networks as they grow. And this is what Unleashed Multi-Site Manager offers, all of the benefits of an Unleashed network, centralized monitoring and reporting with the same functionality, but you can manage up to 1,000 different networks or 10,000 APs and 1,000 switches, whichever comes first. So there's Unleashed values, and it's more towards smart zone scales. ICX and cloud. So with switching rapidly expanding into cloud, we needed to have another look at our branding because we were branded as RUCKUS Cloud Wi-Fi. So we've moved towards just RUCKUS Cloud as a platform with the 3 URLs there. You guys are all going to be using the eu.ruckus.cloud, I would imagine. And this is hosted in a data center in Germany, where the data protection is quite stringent and is of the utmost importance. We've also expanded our hosting abilities into Asia as well, if any of you guys are planning on working abroad or expanding. So not all of the switch families are cloud capable, though there is still a very healthy portfolio available within the switch families, which you can see on the slide here. just a note, just remember, there's the minimum firmware requirements for the switch to be adopted to cloud, which is 8090D or later, which most switches should be shipping with now as standard anyway. So some of the benefits of ICX in RUCKUS Cloud, you've got automatic device discovery. So discovery and secure communications into the cloud, add the switch serial number like you would with your access points. And as soon as it hits an internet connection, it will head to the switch registrar for cloud, and it will connect to the venue that you've specified. You've got zero touch provisioning options. Switches can be updated, auto-updated by cloud. Configuration profiles can be applied to the switches upon first connection, thus reducing your config time of greenfield sites or switch refreshes. You've got ongoing monitoring and statistics, so you can look at your network health, usage, clients, alarms, and events. You've got your remote troubleshooting capabilities, so you can do things like ping and traceroute, and you can now look at the MAC address tables of the switches as well. So all of this kind of enables initial troubleshooting without the need to put boots on the ground. So again, all of this is remotely capable. And you've got your configuration management from the cloud as well. So you can view plain text of the current switch config. You can compare to plain text configs of two backups side by side in the GUI as well. So this is useful for if there's been a change between the backups, which automatically run to. So you could look to try and identify the problem, or you can see what you're rolling back to before you do it. Which is going to allow you to restore the old working configuration if urgent service is required back on site and you don't have time to really dig into it. You can also download the backups to a local storage as well, so it's not all stuck in the cloud and hosted there. And as I mentioned, it is daily config backups for complete peace of mind.
Sam, we've got a very quick question there as well, maybe before we move on, if that's okay.
Okay, let me just check the Q&A. So is the RUCKUS Unleashed Multi-Site Manager a free add-on? It's not, it is licensed, but you guys can have a look at that via Purdicom if you wanted to look at pricing, and it will be on a license per AP or per switch.
Perfect. Yeah, Nick, we can get someone to drop you a line on that as well. Thanks.
Okay, so cloud licensing, just a quick summary for you guys. It's a little bit different to the access points for those of you that have not bought cloud switches yet. We actually split the SKUs out into the different switch family models because it's some of the switches have more features and more requirements for support. Therefore, it's not fair to just play a flat line for all of them. So there's tiered support on that. But what is important to note is that the cloud license for switch includes remote tag support, next business day shipment for hardware, switch, PSU, and fans, plus software updates as well. You don't need to purchase any other support from TAC, so there's no need for those RMT3 bundles that you see in our price lists. And yeah, it covers all of the above. So how does it work? So we've got the config profiles in RUCKUS Cloud. So here you've got a nice picture of that GUI of what you'll see when you log in and look at your switching. We've got the monitoring, so we've got the switch and or stack information. We've got our client visibility, so you can see MAC addresses of your clients and connectivity statuses as well. Events and alarms that you can actually syslog out if you needed to from cloud. We can look at configuration from a venue level, so as the site, or we can look at it at a switch level, so you could do individual switches or port settings, VLAN interfaces, etc. And then, as I mentioned, we've got the troubleshooting as well, which we'll take a look at in the demo. So we've got scalable configuration profiles, so this is going to include things like adding the VLANs tagged or untagged, access control lists. You can do things, DHCP snooping, And you've got your layer 2 parameters like STP and multicast. So you can, and as I said, you can apply this as a blanket across a venue, or you can apply it kind of on a per switch basis. And so if at a venue level, when your switch joins, it's going to take that configuration profile, and you're not going to need to manually intervene or manually configure any of the switches, hence saving time. Something new to cloud is that brownfield deployments are now possible. So what this means is that you can actually add ICX to RUCKUS Cloud and keep its current configuration. So this is going to be useful for your existing sites where there's already ICX in play and they want to transfer a management platform, or maybe they've decided that they just want to scale out and go to cloud. You can actually retain that configuration, have it managed in cloud, and it won't wipe it and start afresh. So again, there's a couple of little caveats on firmware there. So it's 8.0.90D, but it's 8.0.92D for the recent 7150 CO8 C10s and 7150s. And we've got a view here of the config management that I was speaking about just a second ago. So on the screen here, you can see that you've got two plain text files side by side. So this will be from the switch backups that will automatically run. And as you kind of scroll down the screen, again, we'll see it in the demo, it will scroll both sides down in parallel at the same time. So you can match the config line for line, see if there have any changes been made. You could do on-demand manual backups, or you can just let the auto daily backups take care of things. And if you needed to take that backup and download it locally, you can do that, and then you've got the plain text file of your switch config. You can also make changes to your switch from cloud via CLI. So I kind of acknowledge that you can't manage everything from the GUI in terms of configuration changes. So where there is still a requirement to break out into those switches at a local CLI level, you can do that now remotely from the cloud with complete access to make the changes that you need. And again, for your brownfield deployments, this is going to be super useful as well. One thing that people don't really or aren't aware of within the cloud GUI is that you can actually edit multiple ports, and you can edit multiple ports across multiple switches at the same time. So if you have a fresh deployment and you've, for whatever reason, not added your VLANs to a config profile and you wanted to make a change to multiple different ports, you are able to actually just go into the GUI, select the ports that you want to across the switches that you need to, and make those changes there. So it's going to be a great time saver, and it's useful for those people that aren't comfortable with CLI or aren't fluent with the CLI, the ability to just kind of click and go through the GUI and make large scale changes with relatively little effort. We've got our port level QoS as well, and these are the parameters that you can modify within the cloud GUI. So you've got your VLAN IDs, your priority, and your DSCP. So if you need to look at things for video, for voice, and you can create the table of that and the priority that you want that to be set at. At a port level now within cloud, we've got quite a lot of configuration options, and you can see it's quite a busy slide here on the screen. But for PoE, you can start to set things like class, priority of delivery. You can set fixed budgets for ports as well. So if you really wanted to sweat and stretch that PoE budget of your switch, then you're able to start configuring that granularly from the port level configuration. You can do things like enable spanning tree. You've got your VLAN operations as well. And now you can enable protected ports on the switch too. And again, these are just toggle on and off options within the GUI.
Sam, we had another question. Sorry, I hope you don't mind me chipping
No,
in.
that's fine, because I don't see the Q&A things flash up, so please do interrupt.
Oh, perfect. So Ian was just asking as well, do backup configs include password in clear text, as in txt?
We can have a look when we do the demo.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I'll pull a download and we can open that up and have a look, if that's all right. Okay, so now we are going to have a look at the new web UI for the ICX switches. So we did actually have a GUI for the ICX switches prior to this kind of refresh, and as you can see on the screen, it was something that was it was pulled out of the 90s. It was horrendous. It didn't look great. It wasn't easy to navigate, but we had a GUI. The new GUI that we have is HTTPS enabled by default. It supports TLS 1.1 and 1.2, and it's got the following support on the browsers that you can see on screen there. And as you can see, Internet Explorer is not supported. So a little quote that I found here is that friends don't let friends use Internet Explorer, and neither should acquaintances. So, you know, just to extend that to our friends at Ruckus, you guys, we just haven't put support in for it because it's not secure anymore and people do not need to be using IE. So for the Smart Zone users on the call, does this theme kind of look familiar? This is the switch GUI refresh, and as you can see from the slide, a couple of slides back, there has been a significant kind of change to the overall look and feel of this. And it's a nice intuitive dashboard now with useful information for great visual references for a glance, just to see how your network's doing. And we'll have a look at it later, but the front page, we've got some interactive stuff on there as well, where you can flip and change what it is that you're looking at. But at a headline kind of look, you get all of the useful information that you would expect from that switch, and stuff that you kind of see through all of the other management platforms as well. So we're looking at PoE utilization, CPU utilization, memory usage, the temperature of the switch, fan status, etc. So what can we do in that GUI? We've got the lag creation options. So again, you know, if you're not big on CLO, we've got a whole host of kind of click and go configuration options across all of our management options for switching, and that's continued through the new ICX GUI. We can do VLAN basic settings, so we can select the range of ports again. As you can see on the screen with the blue, you know, it's untagged and tagged, so we've got visual representations of what's going on here, and you can select the range of ports and what you want that to be, and obviously give it a name. We also then go into our VLAN advanced settings. So you've got IGMP snooping, spanning tree priority, you can select the multicast version and so on. Again, all click and go options, all from the web GUI, and it means you don't have to go into CLI for it. We've got the LLDP status as well. So this actually starts to give you visual representations within the GUI of what your network's mapping out to look like. So what's plugged into the next port, and it gives you the MAC address of that neighbor as well. And then we've got some device management. So firmware upgrades from the web UI. This is probably going to be a nice change to a lot of people, because that means you don't have to use DFTP or a USB stick anymore. You could just do like you do with the access points, just browse the image from your local machine, upload it, and off you go. You select which partition you want that to go to, primary or secondary, and your firmware upgrade set, and off you go. You've also got the ability to pull quick and easy config backups here as well. And you can restore running configurations too, if you needed to. You also have, like you do with the access points, the ability to kind of plumb in a smart zone address if that's what you're going to be using to manage your ICX switch. And what you'll see if you log locally into the GUI rather than into the smart zone is the active IP list and the secondary or passive IP list for those smart zones. So you can just check in to see that. And if you just wanted to disable the smart zone management, you just untoggle the SZ status. Okay, we've also got the ability to add AAA to the switch as well. So if you need to add more administrators to the switch, you can. And if you wanted to start looking at things like Radius and TACAS, you've also got that ability there in the web UI as well. So if you needed to have some read-write administrators for the switch, or if you needed to have additional full administrators, you can just kind of plumb that all in here. The access control lists again as well, tables that you can just build out within the GUI. So again, much like you're seeing in Cloud or Smart Zone, you've got the ability to plumb these options in now locally on the switch in the GUI instead of through CLI. It makes it a bit more intuitive for those that aren't too familiar with this ICX syntax and who just want to achieve some basic ACLs, VLANs, etc. We are going to move on to our large scale automation now. So I didn't see any comments in the chat for the napalm acronym, so we'll have a look at that as well. According to Gartner, most of you guys who are going to be configuring are managing your switches individually on CLI, and only 8% of people are using web GUIs for this. So, I mean, I hope the ICX guys saw this before they redid ours, but I think that's a lot to do with how kind of legacy that has been and how hard it has been to use. So CLI has just been kind of the default for that. Automation is even further behind on the trend with only 6%. But with the documentation and the progression and just the scale of what you can do with that now, it's only going to be a matter of time before we start to see a flip on this number and people start to kind of step away from the CLI and look towards automation or perhaps the vendor network management systems like we do with our single pane of glass stuff through Cloud, Smart Zone, ICX, etc. And then even down to APIs, 3% is tiny. So Ansible and napalm. Ansible works by connecting your switches and pushing out small programs. So they're called modules. Modules are used to accomplish automation tasks. So you can make large-scale changes using the small programs. napalm and its easy to remember acronym, which is Network Automation and Programmability Abstraction Layer with multiple vendor support. What a mouthful that is. So this is just a Python library, and this implements a set of functions to interact with different network devices using API. So both of these are used to retrieve data and make configuration changes at a large scale. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff hyperlinked on the screen here. So we've actually got a GitHub repository where we are publishing the CLI library for these things. We've also got the Ansible module documentation as well that our engineering team have put together, which is available on our website. So I would encourage you guys to all take a look at that, especially if you are starting to get into things like automation, Python, or if you just want to have a look and see what you can actually achieve using these. So within the Ansible architecture, there are 4 key components. So we've got the control node, which is the central point of management for managed nodes, and it can be an Ubuntu, CentOS, or even just run on a Windows machine. And configuration is pushed to the managed node, so the switch is from the control node. So you make your changes in the control node and push that out. The managed node is a device that will be configured by an Ansible control node. So Ansible supports many types of operating systems, and it's not just RUCKUS that it will work with. It does work in other OSs from Juniper, Cisco, and Linux. So we're just kind of adding our ability to integrate in with this now as well. The playbook, this is a list of plays that will be executed on the managed nodes. So plays are basically a list of tasks which will be performed. So you can do, you can copy files, so you can push firmware, you can change configurations, so you can make multiple mass network changes, and it can span across all of the network devices or the network devices that you would select. Then you've got the inventory. So this is a list of nodes or network devices that playbooks will run against. So managed nodes in inventory can be combined into groups. For example, you could have device type. So you could just put all of your ICX aggregation switches into a group, or you could pick a geographical location. So you've got the flexibility and choice to decide how you would then push the playbooks out to your inventory. So, and again, this will tie us back into how it works. Ansible will work by connecting to your nodes via SSH and pushing out a small program called Ansible modules and executing them. And all of our modules are available and have been developed by our engineering team. And there's a slide that I didn't build out. So here are the modules for ICX. And here is a bunch of stuff that or links that we've put together. So I don't know how many of you do use it, but our education YouTube channel quite often has content updates and real useful, easy, bite-sized kind of how-to guides. So take a look at the YouTube tutorial on how to use Ansible for ICX, and even have a go at doing it. Then we've got our documentation as well, and if you need it, we've got our ICX programmer's guide too, for you guys that are potentially new to the coding side of things. We've got our API documentation as well. So there's a thing called OpenConfig, and it's an informal working group of network operators sharing the goal of basically moving towards a more dynamic programmable infrastructure by adopting software-defined networking principles, such as declarative configuration and model-driven management and operations. So there's another acronym that's not on this. Oh yeah, it is on the screen. YANG. So yet another next generation. So this is a data modeling language for the definition of data sent over network management protocols, such as the netconf or the restconf, which was developed by the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force Group. So YANG's basically a modular language representing data structures in an XML tree format, and this can be converted to JSON as well. So just another language to learn, guys. But again, you know, it is helpful for especially being managing large kind of estates of ICX. So these are the RESTconf API commands at initial release for 9.0. So as you can see here, it's not extensive, but it goes beyond what you can do in the GUI. And this is also just going to be something that will grow and grow and grow. I don't know if any of you have looked at our Smart Zone API documentation, but some of the stuff you can do with that, you know, we've got partners now that are deploying from API and not actually having to log into a Smart Zone, and then they're pulling all of the information that they want to see into the front end that they've built using the ability that we have with APIs to pull the information and to look at the config changes as well. I have whistled through that and just going to check the Q&A. We have no questions.
You're doing such a good job at explaining everything, I think, Sam. So no questions.
Okay, so if I close this one out now, we are going to start off by having a look at the RUCKUS ICX new switch UI. So when you find the IP address of your switch, and I mean, you can do that a number of ways. The way that I did it today was I just have a console cable connected to the switch. And I've just done a show IP, pulled the IP address, HTTPS in the web UI. And this is the splash page that you're going to land with. And it's been pretty well defined that you are logging into a switch rather than an access point or smart zone. And what you'll have here is the default credentials that you would have with your access points. So super and sp-admin. Okay, and you get presented with the dashboard. So this is what we've seen in the slides, but just a bit more of a dive into that and having a look at it. We can see that we're looking at a C10ZP. So there's one of the compact switches that we're going to be looking at today. Straight off the bat, we've got the MAC address, the serial number, the IP address, the firmware version that we're running, and the gateway IP address. So if you did need to pull some information, say for support, whenever you open a ticket with us, you're going to get asked for some, if not all of this. So just being able to log in, pull that straight away without having to go into CLI and look at anything is going to be helpful to a lot of you. We've then got a port view here. So this ICX switch is actually sat right next to me on the desk, and it is connected into the switch that I have mounted underneath my desk. So there's only going to be one live port on it here, which is port 2. So green is good, it's connected, it's at a gig. If there was PoE detected, then we're going to have the lightning bolt in there as well. If it was down or disabled, we've got the following 2 keys here. If you wanted to have a look at the chassis rather than just the ports, we've got the flip button here. So we can see that this is power supply is okay. We don't have a fan in the ICX compact switches because they have fanless. And this is sat next to me running at 61 degrees. And I had to turn the fan off because it was making too much noise for this webinar. So it is a bit warm in here. You can look at your port distribution in a bit more of a user graphical kind of interface here. If we were using PoE, then we've got the PoE budget of what's free and what's used, average CPU utilization, and your memory usage there too. What you can do from the front page here as well is you can actually open up a terminal. So there you have the ability to start looking at specific commands for the ICX switch that you would be able to run, say, in your serial connection. We also see who's logged in. So this is just the default super user, and then you've got the ability to log out too. If the switch was in a stack, you would see more information populated in here than what I have. You also have the ability to kind of dynamically turn that on or off as well. And you can see that all of my stack link ports are down, and this is just a standalone switch. And if there were any additional pieces of information from the stack, you would see that in here as well. Onto the port settings, I don't actually have anything configured in here again as well, but you've got the ability to change things on the port number, the port name, and then you can look at the admin status, the port speed, if you've got a lag on it, and the PoE usage on that port as well. If it was a bigger switch and you need to expand out, then you have the ability to do that on the page there too. We got our layer 2 menu. So here we can start doing the kind of click and go configurations. So we can start to select ports. I'm not going to select port 1 because that will, no, let's do that. We can add laggy McLagsome, select the ports that we want that to be on, and then apply and save. So now those 4 ports are going to be in a lag. If we wanted to add an additional lag beyond that, then we could add just another 2. Then you get the idea. If you need to change these things, you need to add a lag ID as well. You can then save and apply and save within here as well. So important to note that if you are applying the config, you will also need to save it too. So we've got the VLAN settings that we've got here. As you can see, we're just looking at the default VLAN here. All of my ports are untagged. But if I wanted to add a tagged port, I can see that I've just clicked off and clicked on, and that is now going to be a tagged port. But it's on the default VLAN. So what I'd need to do is I'd need to add, say, VLAN 10. Let's give it, that's the search. Let's give it VLAN 10 here. Give it a name. So we'll call that one just a guest. Add it as tagged there, apply. Okay, save successfully. Cool. So now we've got a tagged port on there as well. And if you wanted to do multiple ports, again, you just click through. If you need to unselect, or if you just wanted to select a range of ports, you can just specify the range of ports that you want to do. You don't even have to get into the point where you click in the ones that you want, especially if you're looking at larger switches, you know, the 48 port switches, that could get a bit tedious having to click multiple different ones. We could break out into our advanced settings from there as well. So we can just enable the options that we can see here. So if we need to change the spanning tree priority, active IGMP snooping, if we wanted ARP inspection, different multicast versions, usual spanning tree stuff, and off you go. And again, this is all specific to the guest VLAN. But if we wanted to change that, then we would just filter through the other ones that we have available. So we've got our default, we've got our guest. If you needed to create a management one, you could apply different configs to each of those. I might have broken the switch by applying all of that configuration. No, there we go. Okay, so the LLDP status, again, it's enabled by default, but you can turn it on or off if you wanted to, and it just gives you an overview of your neighbors. So as I said, I've already plugged this switch into another ICX switch, which we can see is my desk 8-port switch. So it's giving me the MAC address of that and where it's plugged into. From a management perspective, this is where we're going to be doing our firmware upgrades. And if we do a backup of the running config, that's going to pull that down here for us. And we were going to have a look to see if we've got the password in plain text, sp-admin. So that does not exist in here as plain text to answer Ian's question. And as you can see, this is pretty much just out of the box with not much going on apart from the changes that we have made so far. Again, from the firmware image, you know, you just browse, you select what it is that you're going to be uploading, and then you select your partition that you want to put that on. And just in 2 questions pop up. Is Fast Iron 9 available for download? So no, this is currently beta at the minute. It is going to be available soon. I will follow up with Carla for a specific release date actually, and then get that sent out to you guys in the follow-up. But if any of you did want to kind of play with the beta in a lab environment, then get in touch and I can sort something out with you. So we've got the syslog stuff here as well, so we can see the changes that we're making and what's going on with the switch here. We can refresh, we can filter by severity, expand the rows, the usual stuff. And if you want to export the logs as well to look at them off of the GUI, you've got the ability to do that. Pretty self-explanatory, this one. Don't think we need to go into too much depth on that. We've got the smart zone status here. So this isn't managed by anything. This is just standalone. But if I wanted to add a smart zone to this, I can just add the IP address in here, hit save, and then I would need to accept the switch within smart zone from the staging zone. And you would then be able to manage the switch from smart zone as well as look at it for monitoring locally. And again, you know, anything additional beyond that, we've got the passive IP listers here as well. And then this will populate your active IPv6 lists if you are using that. So for the information that we kind of saw on the dashboard, we can set the polling interval for all of that. again, this is going to be down to kind of personal preference, how often you're going to be looking at it, how often you want things to be updating. So you can see here, we've got 60 minutes on the poll for the stack, but we've got 59 seconds on the poll for the temperature. And again, you know, we've got the ability to change that to what we want. I would just be cautious of making everything update very, very frequently, because you might see memory and CPU utilization spike from doing that, especially on some of the entry level switches. But I haven't tested, I don't know, 1 second on everything to see what would happen. I might give that a go after this, actually.
Sam, another quick question.
Yeah.
So is 9.0 available now for download?
No, so it's not. It's in beta at the minute. But I just said if anybody did want to try this in their lab environment, to get in touch, and I can sort them out with the firmware. But it is going to be available very soon, and we'll send out the dates with the follow-up email.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
So as we look out into security, we've got the AAA server that you can add in here. So you've got your settings that you would define here. What kind of prefix you're going to be using, up to 3, and at what level authorization you're going to want, and then you select your servers, and you've got the accounting option down here as well for your radius accounting on the port levels. And that will populate within here as well. So you can just add what you need to based on what you've got configured on your specific radius servers. Is it authentication? Is it accounting? Obviously, if you wanted both, you'd set up one for each. And we've got our ACLs that we can build out as well. So if we want IPv4, IPv6, which type we want, and then we just start to build them out from here. So we've got a sequence, an action, the network, and we can save and apply that from there. Obviously name them as well, and then you've got your access control list for your switch, which you can apply to your ports. And that is the whistle-stop tour of the ICX new web UI. So this isn't just going to be it. It is going to develop and build out as the releases come. So much as you've seen with, you know, when we look back at ICX management in Unleashed, that was very basic at the beginning. The same with when it was with cloud. So we've got the foundation for this now. We're just going to build out from it and develop it as the releases come through. So expect to be able to do a lot more with this going forward. And as I said, for those that are interested in having a look at the beta firmware, let's take it offline and have a look at what we can do. So as we move on to RUCKUS Cloud, we have much of what you've just seen within the GUI there. And obviously with the rebrand, I hope that everybody's familiar with this, at least visually, if not being able to navigate through. But if we go into our networking devices, you know, we've got the split between Wi-Fi and switch. So we've got our access points, we've got our switches. So we've got 8 port, 12 port, we've got the 10 port on the desk here. So that is the full house of networking switches. And again, from your dashboard, you know, you're going to be looking at things in a Wi-Fi or within a switching split. So you can see that everything on my dashboard is green, which means that everything is working and fine. And we've also got the geographical locations of where things are separated out as well. So these are where these things are deployed. So which one can we play with that we're not going to break anything? Let's have a look at this one here. So again, we've clicked into the switch on a specific venue. So this venue actually only has a switch on it. It doesn't have any access points. So if we go back to Tyrrell's house, we've got no Wi-Fi and we've got a switch. From here, we can see that there's actually a total of 16 ports on a 12-port switch, plus all of the stacking and uplink ports. We can see that there's 10 clients connected. We're not using any PoE because we're not powering any access points, and there are no alarms. If we needed to stretch out and look at more details of that switch, we've got all of the above here. So we've got the software version that we're currently running in cloud, the serial number for that switch, its uptime, and all of the good stuff. We've got the port view panel here, view here, so we can see what the devices are connected to it, what port speed they're running at with their MAC addresses and stuff. If there was a PoE one in here, again, like you just saw in the standalone web UI, it would have the lightning bolt in there to indicate that it is PoE. If we wanted to have a look at the rear view of the switch, let's say that this was one with fans, redundant power supplies in it, this would all populate through here as well. So if you had a fan that had gone down, you'd be able to see that from the rear view and the front. And you can flip between those two there. You can also change to the individual port view. And this is where you're going to be able to manage things like and add lags. So again, there's a bit more here than we saw just a minute ago in the GUI, but you would dynamically fill that out here and populate that onto the switch that you wanted to, adding your VLANs untagged and tagged if required. This is where we can also start to make changes at port level if we need to. So the screenshot that we saw through the presentation, if we wanted to name the port, we can name it, enable and disable. You know, let's say you've got the switch deployed on site and someone's plugged in something for to one of your switches somehow to power an access point that shouldn't be on the network. You could simply disable the port or just disable the PoE on it, and that would shut them down without having to call anyone on site, without having to be on site. It immediately shuts down the problem. You then have, as we went through earlier, you know, you can change the PoE class, priority, and specific budget. So if you know exactly what your access point is going to require at peak performance, you can specify that value in here and try and sweat the PoE budget of that switch as much as possible. Protected ports, LLDP, which is enabled, and you can go down into VLANs, access control lists, and QoS down here. So you can customize VLANs that you want to for the specific port on a one-to-one basis, or you can do the bulk edit and you can make these changes to multiple different ports at the same time. If you're unsure about anything in cloud, then you've got the question mark pop up, which will take you out to documentation to then explain what it is that you're on and what it does. Also, something else with the switching, or with most of the menus in cloud, actually, if you are looking at this thinking, well, do you know, some of this is actually irrelevant to me, I'm not interested in that, you've got the ability to change the menu that you see. So we actually do report on a lot more stuff than is currently being shown. So if you were interested in CRC errors, but you weren't interested in optics, you're able to actually save that and change that. So then you can dynamically see the CRC errors on a per port basis. And once you've changed this in here, it will save next time you log back into cloud as well. We can look out into the clients. The most it's kind of going to give you at this stage is the MAC address and which port it's connected to and on what VLAN. Again, you know, you can open that out, but everything's already selected. You can select into specific ports, and it's just going to give you a little bit more information than what you saw there. As and when it's available, we'll start to report more information on these things here. Running through your switching events. So again, this is just specific to this one switch. If you looked at this on a venue level, then you would see all of the information for that venue for all of the switches. We can see that this switch has had a few disconnects over the last, what's that, last month. So there was a period of time, I think there was some work being done on the house and the switches were coming up and down. But you're able to search all of these events. You can export them. If you needed to look for specific times, if there was something wrong with the network within a specific date range, then you just look at the creation time, set the specifics, and off you go. You can change your event types, severities. So if you're only interested in critical, I've not got any, or you can start to filter down through the rest of what is available as well. Again, these things you can actually have alerts emailed to you. So where we see here that the switch has been disconnected for more than 15 minutes, I would get an email for that to say, you know, the switch has been offline for 15 minutes. We can't manage it from cloud, which would prompt you to then have a look to see what's going on. So we've got our configuration management here. This is where we can view the config in plain text. And again, there is not any plain text passwords in here. We can actually restore to certain configs. We can download them, we can delete them, or we can compare them. So if we compare that, we can then have the menu up here. Hopefully you'd have multiple configurations, and you can start to pick and choose what it is that you want to configure. You've got synchronized scrolling on and off, which makes it really easy to go down line by line to see what is the same and what is different within the switches. And again, you know, you can pick and choose what that is. And if you wanted to look down one dynamically, you can look at the other one as well. So again, you know, this is all remote, right? So you don't have to be on site. You can do this. Customer calls and said there's been a problem. We've made this change. You've got the ability to restore the network to a working state without having to leave the office or go on site. And then if you want to run manual backups as well, you can do that too. As we move out into the troubleshooting, if there's connectivity problems on site, you can start running pings from the switch. And as you hover over the question mark, it's saying that the target host or IP address must be a valid IP address or domain name. We then actually have the ability to run a trace route as well. So we can verify connectivity further. We can look at IP routes of specific things as well. And what we can, well, we could pull that as well if we needed to. And what's new that we can actually look at is we can start to look at the MAC address table of these switches. So we've got a bit more information here as well. And we can specify Ethernet ports, VLAN IDs, or MAC addresses if we needed to. So that's that. If we need to, we can do a manual reboot of the switch from the cloud. I'm not going to do that on this one because that will knock out someone's network. Or if we needed to make some specific changes to that switch beyond the capability of the web GUI, we've got the SSH connection that we can just break out into from the GUI. So there's no password or anything to enter here because you've already authenticated to get onto cloud. If security is an issue, you can enable two-factor authentication on cloud so that you are really sure about who's getting onto your instance, and then you can make any changes you want to from here. We can add a switch configuration profile. So we can add some VLANs. So let's add VLAN 20, call it guest again. Let's just tick all of the good stuff. And if we're going to specify which model it is, we can actually get down to the granularity of, you know, which ports within these models do we want when they join to have this specific configuration. So it doesn't have to be blanket. You can go quite granular if you want to, but you also have the ability to be quite generic too if you need to. So we'll run through on the 10ZP. We've got, take that off. Next, and then we're going to have some tagged ports as well. I'd like to add another model. Add in the 7550. If we need to add modules as well, we can do that. And then we can tick and click. Next, create. Review what we've done and save. Then we go through to the access control list. If we needed to, we can start getting specific into this. We can also look at trusted ports if we need to for DHCP snooping, ARP inspection. Again, you know, we can add models. We could be specific on ports. That's not working. There we go. Save that. And it's not letting me advance. What have I missed? Please select. Okay, so that's bugged out on the 10 port for some reason. It won't let me advance. But what we'd then next do after that is we would specify which venue we want that to be done on, and it would summarize the changes that we've made. And then once a switch was connected to join that network based on the criteria that we've just been putting in here, that would be the configuration that is applied to that switch upon connection. So again, just for those that haven't done it, to add a switch, we just pop the serial number in. We've got the hardware and configuration requirements hyperlinked here, which will take you out to specified stuff there. Is it a standalone switch or is it a member of a stack? Give it a name. As you can see, we've got quite a few variations here if you need to have a description, and then that will be added to the specified venue that you've put in here. So once that switch is then connected to the internet, it's going to connect to that venue. It's going to take that configuration profile that we created, and you're not going to need to do anything above and beyond that unless there are additional requirements that you have that you didn't include when building your configuration profile. So one last thing to look at is from the venues themselves, you can actually click within them and you can add floor plans to them. So you can add multiple different floor plans. You can add different levels of the floor. You can see here, we've just got a 2 up, 2 down, all on one page. And from there, you can start to add your equipment to the map. So we can see here that we've got the 8-port switch in the living room on this property. It gives you the active key like you see in the dashboard. So green means that it's online and working. But this is especially useful for when you start to when you start to manage multiple sites and you have multiple buildings and maybe you're not familiar with them or you don't visit them often. You can scale this out and build this out, and then you've got a visual reminder or a visual representation of where things are on site and what's where on the site. It's especially useful, you know, if you have to talk a contractor or someone on site through something, you've got reference points now. Obviously, you're not going to really need them in such a small place here, but if you did need to say, you know, this switch is located next to the kitchen in the living room, it's more specific than just saying this switch with a MAC address that is printed on the bottom of the switch that you're not going to be able to look at unless you unrack everything. It just makes your life a lot easier. And then again, when you're looking on per venue basis, you can start to specify things into the switching across 24/7 and 30 days for your ingress, egress, traffic, error trends, top PoE utilization switches, and so on. One thing I haven't covered actually is networking devices. So we've got the quick add from there. Networking devices. Again, customize the menu to what you want to see. CLI, we've done CLI session. We've got the edit on here as well if we need to make any changes once we've added it. And then oh, I slipped my mind. But you're able to pull the SSH password of the device from cloud. So this is going to be useful for when you need to have a local CLI session and you're not using the CLI session from here. Because once a switch joins RUCKUS Cloud, it is given a unique password that you would need to access it locally on site. And that will conclude today's demo. Are there any outstanding questions?
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, we don't have any Q&A at the moment, but yeah, sure. If anyone's got any questions, perhaps add them into the Q&A or the chat. I guess before we wrap up, that would be great. Any more for any more?
Going once, going twice.
Can we have a link to today's recording? Yes, of course. So we have recorded the session, and yeah, as usual, we'll follow up with an email. So you'll receive that hopefully either today or tomorrow. And we'll also send you through kind of everything else you need. So we've got obviously all of the ongoing promotions as well. So we'll send you a link to that. Is there anything else you guys need? No, it's so quiet. Sam, you've done such a fantastic job.
Giving everybody a bit of time back as well so they can all sneak out and enjoy the sunshine.
Exactly, yeah, it's a beautiful day out there. So yeah, I think you've covered everything so well. Okay, thanks ever so much, everybody. And I just want to say thanks for being here. And Sam, also thank you very much for delivering that content for us.